I got this vision of Keir Starmer sitting in Downing Street, just staring at the phone, wondering when Donald Trump's going to make the call, because it's now 5 days into the presidency, and I think Donald Trump...
Since Donald Trump took the presidential oath, Keir Starmer has been eager to speak with him. He impatiently awaited a call from Trump, hoping he might get an opportunity to mend things. That's because Starmer understands Trump is furious with him and the entire Labour Party over the insulting comments they made about him. Now, it appears a phone conversation actually took place between Starmer and Trump. However, several contentious remarks were exchanged, which officials tried to conceal. Perhaps Trump rebuked Starmer. Reports claim the discussion lasted 45 minutes, but after reviewing the details disclosed by the government, it seems the conversation
doesn't sound like a 45-minute call to me. I mean, I'm 45-minute calls with my sister. We get into a lot more than that. I'll tell you what, we've even...
So what's being concealed? Was the conversation shorter than claimed, or did Trump make some harsh remarks that Starmer wants to keep under wraps? In this video, let's uncover the full story. Starmer is attempting to create the impression that his talk with Trump cleared up all tensions between them. He insists the exchange was cordial and that Donald Trump even complimented him. Yet, Starmer himself knows that isn't true. Donald Trump may seem to offer Keir Starmer a friendly gesture in front of cameras, but beneath that diplomatic facade, his real character hasn't changed. He's a man who never overlooks an insult, never pardons an adversary, and always waits for the right moment to get even. He remembers how Starmer and the Labour Party spent years ridiculing, dismissing, and openly attacking him, calling him everything from a neo-Nazi sympathizer to an unstable danger to democracy. Now that Trump has returned to the White House, Starmer finds himself in an uneasy position. He knows Trump doesn't release grudges easily and is urgently trying to build a cooperative relationship. But Trump's record shows that this supposed friendly understanding won't endure. If history in politics is any guide, Trump is merely waiting for the right time to retaliate against those who once demeaned him. He has already begun doing that at home.
The race for the White House, and tonight Donald Trump speaking about retribution and revenge, saying sometimes revenge...
This election is over. Based on what they've done, I would have every right to go after them. And
new reporting on a partisan purge, a plan to politicize the FBI. This involves Donald Trump, and I'm going to show you exactly what's happening. But the first thing to know is this breaks with history and precedent. It is not normal, it is not standard, and it is not part of the other traditional and even expected personnel moves that you have between administrations. You may have heard the term political appointee in our coverage of these hearings. That's all standard. What's not standard and what could be a Friday night sort of news dump, an effort to hide something that Donald Trump doesn't want you to see on the news tonight, is this. Top nonpartisan and career FBI officials basically being pushed in a so-called purge to resign.
Trump has a unique approach when dealing with those who have wronged him. At first, he pretends to be cordial, using diplomacy as camouflage while he strengthens his position. Then, once his rivals are lulled into a false sense of comfort, he strikes back forcefully, whether through policy decisions, public embarrassment, or political tactics. This isn't mere conjecture, it's a recurring strategy he's used with global leaders before. Take, for instance, his interactions with Theresa May and Emmanuel Macron. When Theresa May served as Prime Minister, Trump initially applauded her leadership, calling her a strong woman and an exceptional head of government. But as soon as her policies conflicted with his agenda, he turned against her, criticizing her Brexit approach, ridiculing her decisions, and eroding her credibility in public.
I'm not going to comment on Brexit. I can tell you it's a very complex thing that's going on right now. It's tearing a country apart. It's actually tearing a lot of countries apart. And it's a shame that it has to be that way, but I think we will stay right in our lane. I'm surprised at how badly it's all gone from the standpoint of a negotiation. But I gave the Prime Minister my ideas on how to negotiate it, and I think you would have been successful. She didn't listen to that, and that's fine. I mean, she's got to do what she's got to do, but I think it could have been negotiated in a different manner, frankly. I hate to see everything being ripped apart right now. I don't think another vote would be possible because it would be very unfair to the people that won. They'd say, what do you mean you're going to take?
A similar outcome awaited French President Emmanuel Macron. Like Starmer, Macron tried to play both ends, criticizing Trump when he lacked power, then switching to diplomacy once it became politically convenient. Trump saw right through the act and, during a notorious NATO summit, ridiculed Macron before global leaders, branding him weak and questioning France's standing on the world stage. For Starmer, the circumstances are even graver. He wasn't merely a passive observer during Trump's first presidency, he was an outspoken critic. The Labour Party led major demonstrations against Trump's state visit to Britain, and Starmer's allies launched fierce assaults on him through the press. It would be foolish to assume that Trump, a man who lives on personal vendettas, has brushed any of that aside. Yet Starmer chooses to think otherwise. He convinces himself that one phone conversation settled every issue and that Trump is now on his side. Tellingly, Starmer's urgency to form a cooperative relationship with Donald Trump exposes the deep-rooted unease and apprehension inside the Labour Party as political winds change direction. The desperate efforts to secure that call speak volumes about the fragile position the UK occupies under Labour's leadership.
So Keir Starmer, the United States and France are Britain's biggest allies. You become Prime Minister, there could be a world in which Trump and Marine Le Pen are in office. How would you feel about this?
It's for voters in America and France to decide who they want as their leaders. And if I'm privileged enough to come into office to serve this country, I will deal with the leaders of other countries as they've been elected in by those that live there and those that voted them in.
Mr. Speaker, can I begin by congratulating President-elect Trump on his historic election victory. As the closest of allies, the UK and US will continue to work together to protect our shared values of freedom and democracy. And having had dinner with President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago, I look forward to working with him in the years to come.
This phone call wasn't merely a diplomatic exchange, it was a moment of reckoning. Trump, infamous for remembering slights and keeping a mental list of those who've crossed him, was never going to overlook Labour's past attacks without ensuring Starmer felt the consequences of his actions. The White House's delay in arranging the call sent a clear message: the United Kingdom under Starmer was far from a top priority. When the conversation finally took place, Downing Street rushed to present it as a cordial and productive dialogue, yet the contradictions within official statements point to something far more troubling. They suggest this wasn't a friendly chat at all, but a calculated power play by Trump to reassert control and remind Starmer who holds the upper hand.
They don't take our cars, they don't take our farm products, they take almost nothing. And we take everything from them, millions of cars, tremendous amounts of food and farm products. So the UK is way out of line, and we'll see.
The UK government's account of the call portrays it as a seamless diplomatic dialogue, carefully worded to convey mutual respect and cooperation. Starmer allegedly commended Trump for his efforts in brokering a ceasefire in Gaza, while Trump, in return, voiced appreciation for Britain's deregulation measures aimed at stimulating economic growth. Both sides supposedly highlighted the strength and warmth of their partnership, with Trump even taking a moment to express fondness for the British royal family. At first glance, it appeared to be a standard diplomatic interaction. Yet anyone familiar with Trump's approach knows he doesn't waste words on hollow pleasantries, especially not with leaders who have previously opposed him. If Trump had genuinely offered praise for Starmer, it would have been entirely out of character.
Voting Keir Starmer, the UK Premier.
Yes, he's coming tonight.
What do you think of him? Some of his colleagues in government are quite critical of you.
Well, I'm going to see him in about an hour, so I have to be.
The most striking flaw in the official account is the assertion that the call lasted 45 minutes. A closer look at the readout immediately raises doubts. How could a conversation supposedly nearing an hour be summarized in just a handful of vague lines? Downing Street's report makes no mention of critical geopolitical matters that should have dominated the discussion. There's not a single reference to trade tariffs, despite Trump's long-standing threats of economic reprisals against nations failing to align with American interests. Before we go further, tell us, are you enjoying this video? If so, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive insights into the dramatic shifts shaping British politics. Now, let's get back to it. The matter of NATO spending, another persistent flashpoint between Washington and its allies, was conspicuously missing. Considering Trump's record of chastising partners for falling short of defense commitments, it's simply impossible to believe the topic never came up.
I have been very, very direct with Secretary Stoltenberg and members of the alliance in saying that NATO members must finally contribute their fair share and meet their financial obligations. But 23 of the 28 member nations are still not paying what they should be paying and what they are supposed to be paying for their defense. This is not fair to the people and taxpayers of the United States. And many of these nations owe massive amounts of money from past years and not paying in those past years. Over the last 8 years, the United States spent more on defense than all other NATO countries combined. If all NATO members had spent just 2% of their GDP on defense last year, we would have had another $119 billion for our collective defense and for the financing of additional NATO reserve.
The White House's summary of the call only adds to the confusion. Rather than confirming the alleged 45-minute conversation, the U.S. side issued a remarkably short statement, condensing the exchange into just a few lines. It merely noted a reaffirmation of strong bilateral relations, mentioned the release of an Israeli-British hostage, and included a vague reference to trade and economic matters. That was it. There was no sign of a lengthy or detailed dialogue, let alone a warm, personal rapport. The stark contrast between the two accounts points to one of two conclusions: either the call was far shorter than the UK portrayed, or Starmer endured a tense and uncomfortable discussion that Downing Street is now eager to obscure. If history is any guide, the latter seems far more plausible. Trump has a well-known habit of embarrassing leaders he feels have wronged him. When Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau tried to take a tough line against Trump's trade agenda, Trump publicly branded him weak and damaged his credibility. Angela Merkel faced similar treatment. Trump accused Germany of relying too heavily on Russian energy, an insult that cut deep given her careful diplomatic balancing. Considering this consistent pattern, it's highly unlikely that Trump suddenly chose to treat Keir Starmer with warmth and goodwill.
Well, I have to say, I think it's very sad when Germany makes a massive oil and gas deal with Russia, where you're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia. So we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting all of these countries. And then numerous of the countries go out and make a pipeline deal with Russia, where they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia. So we're supposed to protect you against Russia, but they're paying billions of dollars to Russia. And I think that's very inappropriate. And the former chancellor of Germany is the head of the pipeline company that's supplying the gas. Ultimately, Germany will have almost 70% of their country controlled by Russia with natural gas. So you tell me, is that appropriate? I mean, I've been complaining about this from the time I got in. It should have never been allowed to have happened.
It should never have been allowed to unfold this way. It seems far more plausible that Trump used the phone call to reassert authority. He may have chastised Starmer over the Labour Party's shortcomings, reminding him of the years of hostility aimed in his direction. He could have raised concerns about the UK's economic strategy and hinted at potential trade penalties if Britain failed to align with US interests. It wouldn't be surprising if he also pressed Starmer on NATO contributions, demanding an increase in defense spending or warning of repercussions. The absence of these topics from the official readout strongly implies that the exchange was far more confrontational than Downing Street admits. The inconsistencies surrounding the call's length and content suggest an effort by the government to protect its image. If Starmer had been reprimanded, mocked, or threatened by Trump, officials would have every reason to manipulate the narrative. Starmer, likely believing he could smooth things over, may have quickly realized Trump had no patience for polite diplomacy. If Trump forcefully confronted him over Labour's past rhetoric, Starmer would have been left on the defensive, trying to minimize or redirect the discussion. Trump, uninterested in such attempts, could have dominated the conversation, leaving Starmer scrambling afterward to portray it as a diplomatic win. Trump is not one to forgive or forget. Even if the tone wasn't openly hostile, he's not the kind of leader to overlook past grievances without demanding some form of payback. Known for playing the long game, Trump may not have struck immediately but could be waiting for the right opportunity. In the months ahead, he might leverage his influence to pressure the UK into following US priorities, using diplomatic relations as bargaining power. Should Starmer resist, Trump could retaliate with trade barriers, stalled agreements, or public humiliation during future encounters. A state visit, for instance.
You're talking about the mayor of London. Is that who you said? Yes. Well, I think he's been a not very good mayor, from what I understand. He's done a poor job. Crime is up, a lot of problems. And I don't think he should be criticizing a representative of the United States that can do so much good for the United Kingdom. We talked about it before. He should be positive, not negative. He's a negative force, not a positive force. And if you look at what he said, he hurts the people of this great country. And I think he should actually focus on his job. It'd be a lot better if he did that. He could straighten out some of the problems that he has, and probably some of the problems.
Trump also has the ability to stir political unrest within the United Kingdom. He could indirectly empower right-wing figures such as Nigel Farage, bolstering opposition to Labour's agenda. With close ties to powerful individuals like Elon Musk, Trump could easily exploit social media to drive an anti-Starmer narrative, further eroding Labour's grip on authority. Despite official efforts to frame the call as a positive diplomatic interaction, the balance of power is unmistakable. Trump holds the advantage, while Starmer stands exposed. The glaring contradictions between the official versions, the absence of meaningful details, and Trump's long record of retaliating against perceived adversaries all point to one clear conclusion. This was no cordial exchange. Keir Starmer may convince himself that his recent conversation with Donald Trump repaired relations, but in truth, he's treading on dangerous ground. Trump is already calculating his next move. One of the simplest yet most effective methods for Trump to retaliate against Starmer is through trade. The British economy remains fragile, still coping with the consequences of Brexit, stagnant growth, and global volatility. Trump has repeatedly threatened to impose tariffs on nations he views as economic competitors or disloyal partners. During his first presidency, he launched trade battles against China, the European Union, and even long-standing allies like Canada and Mexico. Should he decide to target British exports, especially in vital sectors like automobiles, steel, or agriculture, the consequences for the UK economy could be severe. Trump has already indicated that high tariffs on the UK remain a possibility, despite the two nations' traditional alliance.
We start with our breaking news. President Trump has told the BBC that the UK is way out of line when it comes to trading with the US and that tariffs might be imposed. But he said his main aim is the European Union, which he has warned will face import taxes soon, accusing the EU of not buying anything from the United States.
On the diplomatic front, Trump could make Starmer's position increasingly difficult. Starmer has expressed a clear intention to rebuild stronger relations with the European Union, yet Trump has long regarded the EU as an economic rival. During his first presidency, he championed Brexit, ridiculed the EU's strict regulatory system, and even argued that Britain would benefit from severing all economic links with Brussels. If Trump compels the UK to choose between aligning with US trade priorities or preserving its partnership with the EU, Starmer could find himself caught in an unwinnable dilemma. A pro-EU approach would provoke Trump, inviting economic backlash. A pro-US tilt would strain ties with Europe, complicating future trade talks with Brussels even further. Either path leads to loss. Yet Starmer remains convinced he can strike a balance.
It's really important that we don't that we work with both, and we don't see it as an either-or. On defence and security, we are working very closely with our European allies every day, particularly in Ukraine, but not only in Ukraine, but equally on defence and security with the US and the special relationship in relation to defence, security, and of course the intelligence capability that we have developed together. This is vitally important And it is in the best interests of the UK, but also the best interests, I think, in terms of global security and defence, that we continue to work both with the US and with Europe on these vital issues. When it comes to trade equally, we've got a huge amount of trade between the US and the UK, as we have with the EU, and that's why it's important that I always act in the national interest, the best interests of the UK, as we stay resolute, saying that...
For now, Trump is simply playing along, allowing Starmer to believe that their relationship has begun on steady ground. But that appearance is misleading. Trump thinks in the long term, he's patient, calculated, and waiting for the perfect moment to make his move. What do you think? Could it be that Trump confronted Starmer, and now Starmer is trying to conceal it? Or do you believe Starmer exaggerated the length of the call to suggest he had a full and meaningful discussion? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Trump will eventually remind Starmer of what he's truly capable of, especially given the harsh words once hurled at him by the Labour Party? If you'd like to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates on British politics and the major shifts shaping its future. Until next time, stay tuned.